At 12:14 on her 25th birthday, Emily's stepfather kicked in her door, dragged her by the hair, and beat her while her mother just stood there and watched. And honestly, that part was horrifying enough. But what her mother said next, that cut even deeper. In one brutal night, Emily realized the person she'd spent years trying to save had never really been on her side. And that moment would change the way she saw family, loyalty, and betrayal forever. The night was supposed to be peaceful. My 25th birthday, a quiet evening in my small Southeast Portland apartment, just me, some Thai takeout, and a true crime podcast I'd been dying to catch up on. The apartment was my sanctuary, my safe place. No yelling, no walking on eggshells, no sudden crashes that made my heart race. Everything was mine. Every piece of furniture, every picture on the wall, every plant by the window. I had created a life I could finally breathe in. No more being afraid. But all of that was about to change, and fast. It started with a knock. No, not a knock. Knock. A pounding. Someone trying to break down my door. The noise was so violent, so unexpected, that it made me drop a glass. It shattered in the sink, and my hands went clammy. The ice-cold dread spread through my veins like wildfire. My breathing went shallow. My body froze. And for a split second, I didn't know if I wanted to run, hide, or just disappear. My body already knew what was coming before my mind could even catch up. "Open this fucking door, Emily." Mark's voice boomed from the other side. The voice I hadn't heard in over a year. My stepfather. I stumbled backward, my heart pounding in my chest. I knew him too well. His rage, his violence, his ability to ruin everything just by showing up. The last time I'd spoken to him was 2 years ago. The last time I'd seen him. I was barely holding it together after my father's death. But Mark was a whole different kind of monster. And tonight, he was about to unleash it again. Through the peephole, I saw him. Red-faced, swaying slightly, his huge frame filling the hallway. But it wasn't just him that made the blood freeze in my veins. It was her, my mother, Linda, standing right behind him. She was smiling. But it wasn't the kind of smile I'd seen before. It wasn't nervous or uncertain. No, this was something cold, something dark, a smile of satisfaction, like she was watching a plan come together. And that's when it hit me. She had chosen him. She was on his side. After everything I'd done, after all those years of trying to save her from him, my own mother had chosen her abuser. She wasn't here to help me. She was here to watch it all fall apart. I grabbed my phone, hands shaking. "I'm calling 911, I yelled through the door, my voice sounding far more confident than I felt. But she wasn't worried. She wasn't scared. "Go ahead." My mother's voice was eerily calm. "Tell them how you've been harassing us. Tell them about the restraining order we're filing against you." Restraining order. What the hell was she talking about? I hadn't contacted them in months. The last time I reached out was to send her information about a women's shelter after a terrible fight they'd had, but she never responded. What was happening? My head was spinning, my thoughts racing, and then it happened. Mark's shoulder hit the door with a sickening crack, and the cheap lock couldn't hold much longer. I pressed the emergency SOS button under my kitchen counter, the one I'd installed at the advice of my therapist. It sent a silent alarm directly to 911. I tried to dial my phone, but before I could press a button, the door crashed open. Splinters of wood flew across the room, and Mark was on me in seconds. I barely had time to react. His huge hand grabbed my hair, yanking me backward. My phone flew from my hand, crashing into the wall. I heard it crack, but I didn't care. Not then. Mark's breath smelled of whiskey and rage. "You think you're so smart," he snarled, "sending your mother that garbage, trying to break up our marriage." The first blow hit me in the ribs, the second in my shoulder, the third to my face. I counted them 9 blows. 9 times he hit me, and every time I felt the air leave my lungs, I counted, not to be brave or strong, but because some part of my brain needed to maintain control. It was a habit from childhood, a way to distance myself from the pain, from the chaos, to make it feel like I had some say in what was happening. But what hurt more than the physical blows was the cold, a distant look on my mother's face. She was standing there, watching as Mark battered me, as he broke my body and my phone, and she said nothing. She didn't scream, she didn't try to stop him, she didn't even look concerned. She just stood there, like it was a spectator sport. Her eyes never left me. And that's when it hit me. She wasn't just standing by. She wasn't just passively watching. She had chosen him. She had chosen this. "Please, Mom," I gasped, blood filling my mouth. I didn't even recognize my own voice. It was a whisper, a desperate plea. "Please, help me." She stepped closer. She didn't touch me. She didn't try to comfort me. She stepped closer, careful not to get her shoes dirty in the mess Mark was making of my life. "You did this to yourself," she said. Her voice was cold, unfeeling, always trying to play the victim, always trying to make Mark look bad. Her words cut deeper than Mark's blows ever could, and the way she said it, like she was proud of him, proud of what he was doing, proud of how he'd broken me, proud of how he'd broken us. It felt like the floor was disappearing beneath me. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. The blood in my mouth tasted like copper pennies, and I couldn't get enough air to scream. But her words, her betrayal, they kept ringing in my head. "You've been poisoned since the day your father died." Poisoned. That was it. I had been the problem all along. I'd tried to save her from Mark. But what if I'd been the one who ruined everything? What if I'd been the one who couldn't see the truth all these years? The truth that she never wanted to be saved. My father had always told me to take care of her, to watch out for her. But what if I couldn't? What if I was the one who had failed? Mark grabbed my phone from where it had fallen. He raised his boot and brought it down on it again and again until it was just fragments, plastic and glass, scattered across the floor. "No more calling for help," he muttered. "No more interfering." But he didn't know about the silent alarm. He didn't know about the security cameras. He didn't know that I had been documenting everything. The voicemail recordings, the photos, the texts, everything I could gather to prove what he had done to me, to my mother. And just when I thought it couldn't get worse, the sirens screamed in the distance. I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe it was over. Maybe someone was finally gonna stop this. But even then, Mark didn't back down. He didn't try to run. He didn't try to hide. He just kept on. He kept yelling, still angry, still looking for a fight. He tried to lunge at me again, even though the officers were already in the stairwell. When the police finally got to the door, Mark wasn't running anymore. He was standing there, still raging. His hands were in fists, but now they were shaking. They put him in handcuffs, but not before he tried to tell them it was all a misunderstanding. "Officers, this is a misunderstanding," my mother said, her voice shaking. "She's been harassing us for years." They didn't listen to her. They didn't buy his story, not when they saw me, bloodied on the floor, not when they saw the broken door, the shattered phone, the way Mark was still trying to lunge at me, even in restraints. As the paramedics checked my injuries, I couldn't stop staring at my mother. Her face was empty, like she was finally seeing what I had always seen. But maybe it wasn't the same. Maybe she was just numb. Maybe she didn't know how to feel anymore. The hospital ceiling had 47 tiles. I counted them while waiting for the x-rays. I let my mind wander, back to when everything felt normal, back to before Mark, before my mother became a stranger, back to when my father was still alive. It's strange how time works like that, how everything can feel so real, so grounded, and then just like that it all shifts. Nothing is the same anymore. I didn't realize it then, but that night would be the start of everything, the night when I would learn the most painful lesson of all sometimes. The person you love the most is the one who will betray you the hardest. And sometimes, the only person who can save you is you. Growing up, I always thought my family was, well, different, not in a bad way, just different from what I saw in the world around me. My father, David, was the anchor. He was the rock. He was the one who held everything together after my mother and I moved to Portland. He always had a smile on his face, even when life wasn't easy. He wasn't just my father, he was my best friend, my protector, the one who made everything feel okay. But then, everything changed. When I was 8, my dad was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. I didn't fully understand what that meant. At first, I was just a kid. I thought cancer was something you could fight. I thought we would beat it because Dad was the strongest person I knew. But cancer doesn't care how strong you are. It takes what it wants, regardless of your willpower, regardless of how many promises you make. Slowly, painfully, Dad got weaker. His skin turned a sickly gray. His laugh got quieter, but it never disappeared. He still held my hand, still told me stories of brave princesses who saved kingdoms, but those stories started to feel more like fantasies, more like things that belonged in another world. I remember the day Dad made me promise him something. "Emmy," he whispered, his voice thin from the chemotherapy. "Promise me you'll look after your mom. She's stronger than she knows, but she'll need you." At that point, I didn't know what he meant. Mom was strong. She had always been the one who worked hard. She had worked 2 jobs when we first moved to Portland. She was always doing something for me, something for us, but I promised. Of course I did. I would have promised him anything. Dad's wish, his final wish, became my own. I had no idea how heavy that promise would become. After my father passed away, it was just Mom and me. I was 10, and it felt like the whole world was crumbling. But Mom was strong, just like Dad said. We moved into a small apartment in Northeast Portland, and she took double shifts at the hospital where she worked as a nurse. I remember sitting in the break room doing my homework while she went from one patient to another. She'd quiz me on spelling words between her shifts, and we'd have Sunday pancakes and Friday movie nights. It was our way of healing, slowly, together. It wasn't perfect, but it was enough. We were okay, or at least I thought we were. I saw her cry sometimes, but mostly, she kept it together. She'd wear Dad's cologne, just a tiny spray on her wrist. "So I can remember," she'd say, her voice breaking, and we'd cry together, just a little. But then she'd laugh at our matching puffy eyes, and it felt like we were okay again. We were healing, slowly but surely, and I thought we would always be okay. For 4 years, we were okay. Better than okay. Even. We had our routines, our traditions. I made honor roll. She got promoted to charge nurse, and we started talking about maybe getting a cat. It was our life. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours. And then Mark came along. I remember the first time I saw him. My mother had gone to the bank to dispute a charge on her credit card. Mark was the manager who handled her complaint. He was tall, clean-shaven, and had this smile that made my mother's eyes light up. I noticed that, but I didn't think much of it at the time. He waived the fee and then asked her to coffee. That should have been the first red flag. Right? But I was 12, and I just wanted my mom to be happy again. It had been so long since I saw her smile like that. When she came home that night, she was glowing, really glowing. I hadn't seen her look like that in years. "His name's Mark," she told me, sitting on my bed like we were girlfriends sharing secrets. "He's divorced, has a house in Lake Oswego, and Emmy. He asked about you. He wants to make sure you're comfortable with him being around." That should have been the moment I started paying attention. But I didn't. I was 12, and I wanted to believe that this man was the one who would make my mother happy again. So when he showed up for dinner a week later with a telescope book because Mom had mentioned I liked stars, I thought, maybe this is okay. Mark seemed patient at first. He came to my science fair, cheered too loudly when I won second place. He even taught me how to drive in an abandoned grocery store parking lot. He called me kiddo and ruffled my hair like the dads in TV shows did. It seemed innocent. At first. 6 months later, they married at the courthouse. Mom wore a cream dress and her favorite lipstick, Russian Red by MAC. I was her maid of honor, holding a bouquet of grocery store flowers. I believed in second chances. I believed in the idea of a family again. And I believed that Mark was the esser. That summer, we moved into Mark's house. It was bigger than anything we had ever lived in. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a backyard with an actual garden. I got the room with the window seat, and Mark bought me a computer for school. Mom decorated with her nursing awards and Dad's old photos. Mark didn't object. He even said David must have been a good man to raise such wonderful girls. But soon, the changes began. They were subtle at first, like fog rolling in from the coast. Mark suggested Mom could work part-time now that he made enough money to take care of all of us. "You've been running yourself ragged," he'd say, rubbing her shoulders. "Let me take care of you." And she let him. Then they opened joint bank accounts. And Mark suggested they sell her car because he didn't think they needed 2 vehicles. The changes seemed logical. They seemed caring. But with every decision Mark made, I could feel my mom slipping away. At first, it was small things. She stopped wearing the bright scrubs she used to love. Instead, Mark preferred her in beige, gray, navy. Her friends stopped calling because Mark always needed her home for dinner. Her sister stopped visiting because Mark said she was a bad influence. And all the while, he kept telling me that Mom was happier than she'd been in years. The first time I started to notice how much she was changing was when she stopped singing in the shower. It was something she always did. A little silly, but it was hers. And then, one day, it stopped. She stopped asking for her own opinions. She began asking Mark for permission for everything from buying groceries to getting her hair cut to calling her own mother. And I didn't understand why. I didn't understand how someone could change so much so quickly. But the more I watched, the more I realized what was happening. I didn't have the words for it yet, but I knew something was wrong. It was the day she threw away Dad's cologne. I found the bottle in the trash, still half full. "Mark says it's not healthy to hold on to the past," she explained, her voice not meeting my eyes. And in that moment, I knew something was slipping away. That night, I started keeping a journal. I started writing down everything, every change, every new rule, every moment my mother was disappearing. Little by little, I didn't know it then, but I was documenting the slow unraveling of the woman I once knew. When I was 14, I started staying late for drama club. Mom was supposed to pick me up, but when I called, Mark answered her phone. "She's not feeling well," he said. "Take the bus." When I got home, I found Mom sitting at the kitchen table, staring at pieces of a broken plate scattered across the floor. Her hands were shaking as she tried to pick them up. "Mom," I said, but she startled, sweeping the pieces into a dustpan. "I dropped it," she said, "so clumsy." But I had seen that plate on the counter when I left for school. and the dent in the wall behind her. That was new. It was the first time I saw Mark's true face, the rage that had always simmered beneath the surface. And my mom, she forced a smile and told me he was upset because it was from his grandmother's china set. But I knew better. I knew this was just the beginning. Mark didn't need to hit her. Not then. His voice alone could reduce her to tears. And then he'd comfort her. "I just want everything to be perfect for my girls," he'd say. And she believed him. She believed that his control, his emotional manipulation, his subtle abuse was all out of love. It was suffocating. The isolation he created was surgical in its precision. By the time I was 15, Mark had taken complete control over Mom's life, her credit cards. Gone. Mark cut them up, explaining it away as identity theft prevention. Her phone had a tracking app on it for safety, and Mark would call her randomly throughout the day. If she didn't pick up within 3 rings, he'd come home. He made sure she kept it with her at all times, even in the bathroom. The emotional control was total. Mom's world had shrunk to nothing but Mark and me, and that's when I made the mistake of defending her. I was tired of watching her shrink in front of him, tired of seeing her lose herself. So, one day, when Mark started berating her about a $3 charge on the credit card statement, I spoke up. "It's $3, I said. It's not a big deal." The silence was deafening. Mark turned to me, his eyes cold. "Not a big deal." His voice was quiet, which was somehow worse than yelling. "Emily, do you know how hard I work to provide for this family? Do you understand what sacrifice means?" That's when I saw it. The way Mom shrank into herself, like she had before. She whispered, "Apologize." And I did. I apologized for something that didn't need an apology, and I watched her shrink even further. Mark had her, he had both of us, and I couldn't stop it. At 16, I started staying away, or drama club, debate team, volunteering at the library, anything to escape. My grades became my escape plan. If I could get into college, get scholarships, maybe I could leave. Maybe then I could save her. But the dinners were mandatory. Family time, Mark called it. We'd sit at the table while he talked about his day, his achievements, his plans for our future. And Mom, she'd nod along, her eyes vacant, like she was just going through the motions. And me, I'd push food around my plate, counting down the days until graduation. The rules multiplied. No friends over without his approval. No social media because it was dangerous. My bedroom door had to stay open unless I was changing. He'd do safety checks of my room, going through my drawers, reading my homework, checking my computer history. I learned to hide everything that mattered. My real journal went inside an old tampon box. My college applications were done at school. And my phone, it had a password Mark didn't know. Though I had to be careful, he'd demand to see it randomly. And Mom, she'd tell me, "He loves us. He just wants what's best." But I could see her now. I could see how she had changed. She wasn't the woman I remembered. She was just broken. And there was nothing I could do to save her. So I started documenting everything. Times, dates, incidents, the way she flinched when Mark's car pulled into the driveway, the way she'd rehearse conversations before calling anyone, the way she started taking anxiety medication but had to hide the bottles because Mark didn't believe in chemical crutches. I didn't realize it at the time, but I was building a case. I was gathering evidence, not for a trial that wouldn't come for years, but because I knew deep down that one day, all of this would matter. One day, I'd need to prove everything he had done to us. I just never imagined my own mother would stand by his side when that day came. I remember the first time I realized that college was my way out. I was 14, sitting at the kitchen table with a stack of scholarship applications in front of me. The kitchen was always the place where the tension was the highest, where Mark would come in from work and start his slow, methodical questioning. But this time, I was focused on something else, on the words in front of me, the questions I had to answer, the goals I had to set for myself to escape. School had always been my safe space, the one place I could focus on something other than the constant pressure at home, drama club, debate team. All of it was an escape, even if it just for a few hours. And it worked. My grades were my shield, my escape route. I made honor roll year after year. Each paper I turned in, each exam I aced, taking me a step closer to leaving the house, to leaving Mark and the suffocating environment I was trapped in. But no matter how hard I worked, there was always this gnawing feeling, this weight in my chest that I couldn't shake. Leaving meant leaving her, my mother, the woman who raised me, who had always been there, who had promised me she'd look after me after Dad passed away. Every time I looked at her, I could see the woman who was once strong, who once believed in herself. I could still hear the echoes of her laughter, the way she used to sing in the shower. And now, she was so different. Every time I thought about leaving, about applying to colleges out of state, the guilt would hit me like a brick. I couldn't leave her. She was my mother, the person who needed me, right? But as the years went by, the distance between us grew wider. Mark's hold on her was tightening, suffocating her, and I felt powerless. I could see her slipping away, but I couldn't stop it. She wasn't the same woman I had grown up with, and it terrified me. I remember a conversation we had when I was 16, right after I had finished a long debate at school. I was pumped up, full of adrenaline, proud of my performance. But when I came home, it was a different story. Mark was in one of his moods, and that meant nothing good for anyone in his path. Mom was already on edge, her usual smile replaced by a nervous tightness around her eyes. I asked her, for the 100th time, if she was okay, and for the 100th time, she said she was. But I knew better. "You need to let him be, Emmy," she said, her voice shaking just slightly as she spoke. "You don't know what it's like to have someone who loves you, who wants the best for you." "Mom, that's not love," I snapped, unable to hold it in any longer. "You can't see it, but he's controlling you. He's controlling everything." She flinched at my words, like I had slapped her. I immediately regretted it, but it was too late. Mark's voice echoed from the living room, loud and harsh, calling her in. She nodded, her face falling. The moment was gone. It was like that for years, a back and forth between wanting to protect her and wanting to save myself. I couldn't keep sacrificing myself for her, not anymore. I needed to live my life, but how could I leave knowing that she was stuck in that house with him, knowing how much it was hurting her, how much he had already taken from her, and every time I thought I had made up my mind, every time I thought I could let go of the guilt, something would happen that pulled me back. One night, when I was 18, I found myself standing in the bathroom, staring at my reflection. I had just gotten back from a scholarship meeting at school, and I had been accepted to several universities. The future was finally within my reach. And yet, the happiness I should have felt was dampened by the suffocating weight of guilt. I could see myself in that mirror, someone so eager to run, to escape, and yet I knew that leaving meant abandoning my mom. The internal conflict was eating me alive. The thought of her being alone with Mark, with no one to protect her, was unbearable. But the thought of staying, of living in that house for the rest of my life, was equally unbearable. I couldn't do it anymore. I needed to get away. I needed a future. I needed a life of my own. But the moment I made that decision, the moment I started filling out applications, my mom started changing too. She would watch me quietly as I worked on my college essays, her face tight, eyes filled with something I couldn't quite read. She would offer me advice, tell me how proud she was of me. But behind that pride, I could see the fear that I would leave, that I would be gone for good. The day the acceptance letter came from the University of Washington, I felt a mix of emotions, elation, yes, but also dread. It was real now. I was going to leave. I was going to finally get out. But I still wasn't sure if I was ready to leave her behind. I had worked so hard to get this far. I had given everything to my grades, to my future, but could I leave her, knowing she needed me? Could I really just walk away? It didn't get easier. As the months passed, I could feel the tension building. Mark's grip on her was getting tighter, his behavior more erratic. He started making more decisions without consulting her, telling her what to wear, what to do, where to go. Her voice grew quieter. Her shoulders slumped more often. She was becoming a shadow of the woman I once knew. One night, just a few weeks before I was supposed to leave for college, I sat down with her. I had finally decided to tell her, to explain how I felt, to tell her that I was going to go, that I couldn't stay. I was terrified, but I knew it was the only way to start living my life. "Mom, I'm leaving," I said, my voice shaking. "I'm going to school. It's what I've worked for, what I need." She looked at me, her eyes filled with an emotion I couldn't place. Was it relief, or was it something else? "I know, honey," she whispered. "I know you have to go. I just wish you didn't have to leave like this." Her words hit me hard. I could hear the resignation in her voice, but also the guilt. It wasn't her fault. She was trapped, stuck in a situation she couldn't escape, and she was asking me to leave anyway. "You can't stay here with him," I said, my voice cracking. "You have to leave too." She shook her head, her eyes welling with tears. "I can't leave, Emmy. I can't do it. He'll never let me go." "But Mom, you can't stay here. You're not happy. This isn't living." She sat there in silence, her head lowered, her hands clasped in her lap. "I don't know what to do anymore. I've been trying to keep everything together, to make it work, but I've failed. I've failed you." My heart broke for her. She wasn't the woman I used to know. She wasn't the woman who promised me everything would be okay. And yet, I still couldn't leave her. I still couldn't abandon her to Mark's cruelty. And every time I thought I had made my peace with my decision, I was pulled back by the guilt. The night before I left for college, I sat down with her again. This time, we didn't talk about Mark. We didn't talk about anything heavy. It was just the two of us, sitting together in the quiet. She helped me pack, folding my clothes with shaking hands. She tucked little notes into my bags, words of encouragement that I wouldn't find until later. "I'm proud of you, Emmy," she whispered as she tucked a note into the pocket of my jacket. "I just want you to be happy." The weight of her words hit me like a ton of bricks. I wanted to be happy, but could I be happy knowing I was leaving her behind? Could I build a life for myself, knowing what was happening at home the next morning? Mark was out for a golf tournament, and Mom made a show of helping me load my things into the car. But I could feel the tension. I could feel the words left unsaid. His parting words to me were a warning, disguised as advice. "Remember, Emily, family is everything. Don't forget where you came from." The threat was clear. Don't forget who you left behind. As we drove north on I-5, Mom didn't speak for the first hour. I could feel the weight of her silence. Then, as Seattle's skyline appeared in the distance, she spoke. "Your father would be so proud. You're doing what I couldn't. You're saving yourself." I wanted to cry, but I didn't. Instead, I reached out and took her hand. "Mom, I love you." Her knuckles were white on the steering wheel. "Live your life. Fall in love with someone kind. Have adventures. Don't look back. And whatever you do, don't try to save me. Promise me." I didn't know what to say. I couldn't promise that. I couldn't leave her, even if she was asking me to. But in that moment, I understood something I hadn't before. My mother was lost, but I wasn't. I had the chance to be more than just a caretaker. I had the chance to live a life of my own, and I had to take it, so I did. I went to college, and every day I carried that guilt with me, but I also carried the hope that maybe one day my mom would find a way to save herself too. The courtroom was silent as my mother took the stand. I could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on me, each breath tight in my chest. This was it. After everything, after years of pain and confusion, she was finally going to speak the truth. But I wasn't ready for what came next. She looked smaller than I remembered, wearing a modest gray dress that covered the bruises I knew were there. Her hands trembled as she took the oath, and I could see the cracks in her facade. For so many years, she had worn the mask of the perfect wife, the perfect mother. But now, as she sat there, it was clear how much she had been hiding. I could see the years of hurt, the weight of every decision she had made that led us here. I sat in my seat, my eyes locked on her, trying to read her, trying to understand how it had come to this. Mark was sitting at the defense table, his expensive suit a stark contrast to the despair on my mother's face. His lawyer, Richard Brennan, stood confidently as he prepared to cross-examine her. But I wasn't focused on him. My entire being was fixed on my mother, the woman who had always been my protector, my guide now, finally, coming face to face with the truth of what had happened. "Mrs. Sullivan," Brennan began, his voice smooth and practiced. "Can you tell us what happened the night of the incident in Emily's apartment?" The question seemed so simple, but the air in the room grew thick with tension. My mother didn't immediately respond. She looked down at her lap, her shoulders trembling slightly, and I could see her biting her lip, trying to hold back tears. She had always been strong, always the one who kept it together, even when everything around her was falling apart. But now, in this moment, I saw how much of that strength had been eroded by years of fear and manipulation. For what felt like an eternity, she didn't speak. It was as if she were trying to find the words, trying to figure out how to tell her story, how to finally admit what she had done. But then, finally, the silence broke. "We went to Emily's apartment," she said, her voice soft, barely above a whisper. "Mark and we went to talk to her about the harassment." Harassment. That word hit me like a slap to the face. I had never harassed anyone. I had only tried to protect my mother, to help her escape the man who had taken everything from us. But as I listened to her speak, I realized how deep the lie had gone, how long she had been complicit in his narrative. "And did your husband attack her?" Brennan's question came quickly, his voice steady, pushing her to answer. Mom's shoulders stiffened, and for a brief moment, I thought she might say something else, something to deny the truth. But instead, she looked up, her eyes meeting mine for the first time in what felt like years. And then she said the words that changed everything. "No," she whispered, her voice trembling. "He attacked her unprovoked." I just stood there. The courtroom seemed to freeze. Time stopped. I could barely comprehend what I had just heard. She had just admitted it. She had admitted that she watched him hurt me, that she had stood by, doing nothing to stop it. For years, I had blamed myself. I had believed that I wasn't enough, that I hadn't done enough to protect her. But now, she was finally telling the truth. And with that truth came the weight of everything she had chosen to do, everything she had allowed to happen. Her voice cracked as she continued, her eyes now filled with tears. "He hurt her. He hurt my baby girl. And I didn't stop him." She looked down at her hands, unable to meet anyone's gaze, and the floodgates opened. The tears fell freely. unchecked. I could see the shame in her face, the guilt that she had carried for so long. She had carried it for so many years, always trying to protect me, always trying to protect him. But in the end, she had only destroyed us both. Mark's face turned red, his fists clenched as he sat there, seething with rage. He wanted to lash out, to yell, to scream, but the courtroom was silent. The truth was out. The lies had unraveled. My mother's silence had allowed his abuse to continue, but now she was breaking her silence. The floodgates had opened, and there was no going back. I felt a strange sense of release. The truth was out in the open. She had finally admitted what I had known deep down all along. But it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough to fix everything. I wasn't sure it would ever be enough. Brennan, still trying to maintain control of the situation, pressed her further. Mrs. Sullivan, you're saying that Mark attacked Emily while you watched. Can you explain why you didn't intervene? He was trying to twist the truth, to make it seem like my mother was just another victim in this twisted mess. But I could see through it. I could see the truth in her eyes. I was afraid, my mother said, her voice breaking. I was terrified of what he would do. He had already taken everything from me, my life, my identity, my sense of safety. I couldn't fight him. I couldn't fight back. I heard the words, but they didn't make me feel better. They didn't make the betrayal hurt any less. She had chosen to live in fear, to let him control everything, and in doing so, she had let me suffer too. My heart ached for the woman she had become, but I was also furious at her for allowing him to destroy us both. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run up to that stand and shake her, tell her everything I had been holding in for so long. Tell her that I couldn't keep doing this, that I couldn't keep pretending like she wasn't part of this mess. But then I saw it, the look in her eyes. It wasn't just guilt, it wasn't just shame. It was something else too, something raw and painful. It was a cry for help. She had been trapped, and now, finally, she was free. The room was still. The only sound, the soft sobs of my mother. And then, almost like a whisper, she spoke the words that I had never thought I would hear. I encouraged him. God help me. I stood there and told my baby girl that she deserved it. The words hit me harder than any of the blows Mark had ever dealt. I had spent my whole life trying to protect her, trying to save her from him. But she had been saving him, choosing him over me. It wasn't just the physical abuse that had broken me, it was this. It was the emotional destruction, the way she had let him break her and take everything that was ours. But then something in her shifted, something broke in her. And for the first time in years, I saw my mother, the woman I had once known. She looked up at Mark, her eyes filled with something I had never seen before, defiance. He's been hurting me for years, she said, her voice shaking but strong. He's been controlling me, manipulating me, and I let him because I was scared. I thought he would destroy everything I had left. But I'm done. I'm done living in fear. It was the moment I had been waiting for, the moment when she finally stood up for herself, for me, the moment when she finally broke free from his hold. And in that moment, I realized something that had been so hard for me to accept. She wasn't just my victim. She was his too. And now, finally, she was finding the strength to fight back. The courtroom was stunned into silence. Mark's face went from red to purple, his rage barely contained, but the damage was done. His mask had cracked. My mother had finally spoken the truth, and there was no taking it back. As she finished her testimony, the air in the courtroom felt different. It felt lighter. Somehow, the truth was finally out in the open, and with that truth came the possibility of healing. My mother was no longer the woman who had let herself be controlled. She was a woman who had been broken, but was finally starting to rebuild. I could feel the weight lifting off my shoulders as I listened to her speak. For so many years, I had carried the burden of not understanding, of not knowing why she had let this happen. But now, in this moment, I understood. She had been trapped. But now, smiles, she was crying. And with her freedom came mine. It wasn't easy. It wasn't simple. But for the first time in years, I felt like we were both on the road to healing. The truth had been spoken, and that was the first step in reclaiming our lives. The jury deliberated for hours, but in the end, Mark was found guilty on all counts: aggravated assault, breaking and entering, criminal threats. And as the sentence was read, as Mark was led away in handcuffs, I finally understood something. This wasn't just about me. It wasn't just about my mother. This was about both of us, taking back control of our lives, one step at a time. Healing wasn't something that happened overnight. It wasn't even something that came easily. There were days when the weight of everything felt like too much. Days when I was drowning in the trauma of my past, still trying to make sense of what had happened. But slowly, little by little, I began to rebuild my life. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine again. I threw myself into my work. I had always wanted to help people, but after everything that had happened, it felt like more than just a job. It felt like my calling. I became a counselor, working with survivors of domestic violence. The stories I heard broke me, piece by piece, yet they also gave me strength. Each person I helped reminded me that survival was possible. They taught me that no matter how broken you felt, you could still put the pieces back together, but that didn't mean I wasn't still struggling. There were days when I would sit in my office, talking to a survivor, and all I could think about was my own mother. It was as though her presence, her absence, was haunting me, lingering in every conversation. I had helped so many women escape their abusers, but I hadn't figured out how to escape the one who had held me captive for so long emotionally. At least, the more I helped others, the more I realized how much of my own healing still needed to be done. It was a journey that wasn't linear, and it wasn't always pretty. Some days, I would feel like I was moving forward, and then something would happen, a memory, a moment, and I would be right back at square one. That's how trauma works. You can never outrun it completely, but you can learn how to live alongside it to make it part of your story without letting it define you. And then there was the letter, a year after the trial. I got a letter from my mother. I had been expecting it, in a way. I had been holding on to the hope that maybe, just maybe, she would find a way to redeem herself, that she would finally understand the weight of everything she had done. And when the letter arrived, I could feel my hands shaking as I opened it, my heart pounding in my chest. I had no idea what to expect. Was it an apology? Was it an attempt to justify everything? Or was it just another form of manipulation? But what I read was something else entirely. She wrote about how she had left Portland, how she had found a women's shelter in Phoenix. She wrote about finding a job, about starting over. She said she was in therapy, that she was learning who she was outside of being a wife or a mother. For the first time in years, I could feel the woman she had been peeking through the cracks of her words. She said she was proud of me, proud of the woman I had become. She said she had always hoped I would be stronger than her, but that she had never expected the cost of that strength. She wrote that she remembered the woman who had worn red lipstick and sang in the shower, and that, even if she wasn't back yet, sometimes she saw glimpses of her. But the most powerful part of the letter was when she wrote, "I think about you every day, not with guilt, though there's plenty of that, but with awe. You became everything I couldn't, strong, independent, unbreakable. You saved yourself when I couldn't save either of us." I read the letter over and over again, each time feeling the same mix of emotions. Part of me wanted to forgive her. I wanted to believe that she was finally seeing the truth, that she was finally taking responsibility for her actions. But another part of me, the part that still remembered the years of betrayal, the part that had watched her choose him over me time and time again, couldn't bring myself to let her back in. The letter wasn't an apology. Not really. It was more like a confession, a plea for redemption, but I wasn't sure I was ready to give her that. I wasn't sure I was ready to forgive her for everything she had allowed to happen. Yet, at the same time, I couldn't help but feel a twinge of empathy. I could feel the weight of her guilt, her regret, the realization that she had been complicit in the destruction of everything we had once been. And as much as I hated her for what she had done, I also understood that she was a victim too. She had been manipulated, broken down, and kept under his control for so long that she had forgotten who she was. She had forgotten that she was a person, not just a wife or a mother. In some ways, I wanted to offer her a lifeline, a chance to redeem herself, but I also knew that I couldn't carry that weight anymore. I couldn't carry the burden of her choices. I had spent so many years trying to save her, trying to fix things that were beyond my control, but I couldn't fix her. I couldn't save her. So I didn't respond to the letter. Not yet. Maybe I never would. Maybe some wounds are too deep to heal, too painful to forgive. But I kept the letter, and I kept it close, because even though I wasn't ready to forgive her, I wasn't ready to let go of the possibility that one day she might find her way back to herself. And I knew that no matter what happened, I would always be there for her, even if that meant offering her the one thing she had never given me the chance to heal on her own terms. To find peace, even if that peace was never going to come from me. In a way, the letter was a turning point for me. It made me realize that healing wasn't just about letting go of the past. It wasn't about forgetting what had happened or even forgiving the people who had hurt me. It was about moving forward, about finding peace within myself, even if the people who had hurt me couldn't find it themselves. I continued my work with survivors, helping them find their own way out of the darkness. I watched them build new lives, just like I was trying to do. I listened to their stories, their pain, and I gave them the hope that I had once needed. It wasn't easy, but it was worth it. I didn't know what the future held for my mother. I didn't know if she would ever find the strength to truly heal, or if she would remain stuck in the past, trying to make up for all the wrongs she had done. But I knew that I had to let her go. For my own sake, I had to focus on my own healing, my own future. It wasn't about forgiveness anymore, so it was about freedom. Freedom from the past, freedom from the pain, and I knew that no matter what happened, I would continue to help others find their way out of the darkness, just as I had. So I kept moving forward, and maybe, just maybe, one day, I'd be ready to face my mother again. But until then, I was enough. I had survived, and I was going to make every moment count. Emily's journey is a testament to strength, survival, and the power of speaking out. Her story reminds us that even in the darkest times, healing is possible, and there's always hope for a brighter future. If you've been impacted by domestic violence or have a story to share, we encourage you to comment below and connect with others. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories of survival and support. Together, we can break the silence and help others find their way to safety and healing.